All right, let's jump right into today's explainer. We are cracking open the mind of one of the absolute most fascinating figures in modern psychology, Carl Jung. Now, if you've ever wondered why certain symbols, myths, or religious ideas just seem to pop up all over the world, completely independent of one another, well, you're exactly in the right place. We're going to explore Jung's groundbreaking approach to religion. Because unlike some of his contemporaries who saw religious belief as just a symptom of mental illness, Jung saw it completely differently. He believed it was a deeply ingrained, absolutely crucial tool for human psychological growth. Take a second and just absorb this quote. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That right there is our hook. It's the core philosophy driving Jung's entire worldview. He fundamentally believed that looking inward, literally plunging into the hidden depths of our own minds, is the key to understanding ourselves. And, especially for our focus today, it's the key to making sense of our deep-seated religious impulses. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the impact of World War I, then unpack the collective unconscious, archetypes, and individuation. After that, we'll put Jung head-to-head against Freud, and finally, we'll cover the main criticisms of Jung's theory. Section 1. The impact of World War I. To really get Jung, we have to set the stage historically. Think back to the sheer devastation and absolute chaos of the First World War. For Jung, this catastrophic event completely shattered the social, political, and moral certainties of the Western world. I mean, when the external world completely falls apart and makes absolutely no sense, where else can humans go? We're forced to look inward. Jung realized humanity desperately needed some kind of internal mechanism to find balance and meaning in a senseless world. And for him, that crucial internal mechanism was religion. It wasn't an escape from reality, it was literally a psychological lifesaver. Section 2. The collective unconscious. That whole idea of humanity looking inward leads us to the absolute bedrock of Jung's theory. Make sure you get this definition down for your notes. Jung proposed that beyond our everyday conscious mind, and even beyond our personal unconscious, the place where we stuff our own individual repressed memories, there is a much deeper layer. He called it the collective unconscious. Jung argued that just like evolution gives us a physical blueprint for our bodies, it also provides a psychological blueprint for our minds. This is the oldest part of the human psyche. It's filled with primordial images shared by literally all of humanity, completely regardless of our personal experiences. That's why, for example, Jung noticed people all over the globe, across totally different eras, instinctively link their concept of God to light. That's not something we learn, it's something we inherit. Section 3. Archetypes of the mind. So how does this massive, shared, collective unconscious actually show up in our everyday lives? Well, it manifests through what Jung called archetypes. The word literally translates to original pattern. You can think of them as a kind of inner map. They're these pre-existent symbolic forms living in our collective unconscious that quietly organize our ideas behind the scenes. And because every single human shares these identical psychic structures, we're all predisposed to come up with the exact same mythical and religious themes across all cultures. We don't inherit a specific detailed picture of a god, but we definitely inherit the psychological tendency to create one. Let's quickly run through the 5 big archetypes you need to know. First up, the persona. This is our mask. It's the face we show the world to hide the stuff society might not like. Second is the shadow, which is our repressed, unacceptable dark side. We actually tend to project this onto others. Think of the classic devil figure. Third and fourth are the anima and animus, representing our inner, repressed gender opposites. And finally, the big one, the self. This is the ultimate goal of integration. It's all about seeking fulfillment and wholeness. In fact, Jung often referred to the self as the God within, basically the mystical, unifying center of the human soul. Section 4. The process of individuation. Now you might be wondering, how do we get all these different archetypes to actually work together? Well, that brings us to individuation. This is the ultimate journey of self-realization. It's the gradual integration and unification of the self. So instead of keeping that dark shadow locked away or constantly hiding behind our persona mask, individuation demands that we embrace every part of our unconscious mind. We have to resolve our inner psychological conflicts by dragging the unconscious stuff out into the conscious light. According to Jung, this journey plays out over our entire lifespan. In the first part of life, from childhood up to around age 35 or 40, we're basically just building our persona. We're trying to fit into society, building our careers, and pushing down our deeper, messier traits. But in the second half of life, the script totally flips. From 35 onwards, true mental health requires us to embrace the unconscious. We have to start asking those deep, heavy, spiritual, and philosophical questions. The goal here is total psychological wholeness. Because of this, Jung didn't just see individuation as therapy, he saw it as a profoundly religious process. What's really fascinating is how Jung grounds these abstract mystical ideas using very concrete religious symbols. For him, these aren't just historical facts happening out in the world. They're psychic realities reflecting our own inner journey. Take the figure of Christ. Jung interpreted Christ's death as the ultimate symbol for sacrificing our own selfish ego so we can become complete. Or think about the mandala, that recurring, beautiful geometric symbol you see a lot in Eastern religions. Jung was completely obsessed with mandalas. He saw them as this powerful visual representation of the center of the personality. They perfectly symbolize the quest for integration, wholeness, and that ultimate realization of the self. Section 5. Jung versus Freud. Okay, putting these two head-to-head is a massive advantage for your exams because it highlights a really fundamental divide in psychology. First, let's look at the libido. Freud reduced the libido entirely to a drive for sexual satisfaction. For him, neuroses, and by extension, religion, were rooted in sexual trauma, like the Oedipus complex. Jung completely rejected that. He saw the libido as a much broader, undifferentiated life force. Second, neurosis. Freud notoriously claimed religion is a neurosis. He saw it as a dangerous mental illness and a defense mechanism. Jung flipped that entirely on its head. He argued religion isn't the illness at all. It's our natural impulse toward finding psychic balance. It's actually the cure. And finally, their big picture view. Freud saw religion as a dangerous illusion that science needed to replace. Jung, on the other hand, saw it as immensely beneficial and totally natural. In fact, Jung argued that without some sense of spirituality, we're actually way more likely to suffer from poor mental health. For Jung, religion integrates the mind. Section 6. Criticisms of Jungian theory. So, as brilliant and compelling as Jung's theories sound, we have to pivot to the evaluative part of the syllabus. Here's a summary of the main pushback. First up is the glaring lack of empirical evidence. Jung's whole framework relies really heavily on his own clinical observations and his subjective analysis of dreams. It is notoriously difficult to prove the existence of some invisible collective unconscious in a science lab. And if a theory can't be falsified, critics argue it's scientifically meaningless. Then you have anthropologists like Jeza Rohaim. He points out that we don't actually need a mystical collective unconscious to explain why myths are shared globally. Humans just share common physical realities, like the fact that we're all completely dependent on our parents when we're babies. That easily explains why we invent similar cultural stories. Next is the philosopher Martin Buber. He argues that a true religious experience has to be an encounter with something externally real, something wholly other. If an experience is just happening entirely inside your own mind, Buber argues it's not genuinely religious anymore. Which brings us to the final and maybe the most devastating critique of all: reductionism. Theologians like Father Victor White actually warned that Jung's friendliness toward religion is super dangerous. By reducing God to just a psychological archetype, a handy tool for our mental health, Jung is completely stripping away the objective reality of God. And that leaves us with a pretty profound evaluative dilemma. It's exactly the kind of question you'll need to tackle in your final exams. On one hand, Jung teaches us that religion is vital, it's beautiful, and it's absolutely necessary for healing the fractured human mind. But on the other hand, if God is ultimately just an inherited archetype, just a projection of our own inner self striving for mental balance, does that make our religious experiences any less real? Or does it just change where we should be looking to find the divine? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we continue unpacking the greatest ideas in philosophy and psychology.